Okay, before proceed with the video, I just want to say a few things. The poll I posted for this, so I think currently Mace versus Yoda has more votes, but I made my decision like a few days after I posted it, and it got a few more votes in the past day or two. So, yeah, I'm still, like, obviously I'm proceeding with Luke versus Obi-Wan, but later on, I will do Mace Windu versus Yoda. But I think it was better to do this because I mean at that point in time I had it was a tie, and I chose this one because I did recently do the one with Mace Windu versus Thanos, and I don't want to be repeating characters so soon with verses because I feel like that would just kind of be But yeah, regardless. Uh, Now let's get into the video and find out once and for all who is more powerful, Luke Skywalker or Obi-Wan Kenobi. Okay, this might be a little bit different than my other verses, which are a lot of times discussions, but like, okay, this, I'm gonna have to break this down a little bit because this is some very controversial stuff. But all right, for starters, this is gonna be Obi-Wan during Revenge of the Sith versus Luke during the Mandalorian or Book of Boba Fett. I mean, they're like a few like weeks apart, so it doesn't really even matter, or maybe months at most. I don't know. It doesn't really matter which one you're saying. Whatever. I'll just say Mando or whatever. But so yeah. The problem that arises in this, which is why I have to make it kind of a breakdown, is because it's really tough to gauge how powerful Luke is, and different people have different ways of perceiving his power in the original trilogy, especially, and in the Mandalorian too. I kind of talked about this before in a lot of my older videos, but yeah. So let's start off. So in the original trilogy, this is like really where the controversy can come from. So he fights Vader a few times, and okay, let's just talk about his fight versus Vader in Return of the Jedi. I can make a more long, extended version of this video, but I think it's safe to say that Vader was holding back against Luke. It was pretty heavily implied that they were testing Luke, and obviously, if you're testing someone for your Sith apprentice, you wouldn't want to kill them. And yeah, I don't think he's genuinely as powerful as Vader, and like he's just not as skilled as the Jedi in the prequels. George did say this. He said, not word for word, but he said that Luke is just like a boy who had a little bit of training from an old man. Like he's not like the Jedi in the prequels. This is the Jedi at their peak, and yeah, like he doesn't have the training of a Jedi like Obi-Wan or anything like that, or the technique or the skill. And like uh, Obi-Wan and Vader's fight in A New Hope, they've kind of like made a reason. Well, there's been a few reasons for why it was so slow paced and stuff, and the reasons are because they both were very cautious of each other, so they didn't want to go head first into the fight and go crazy. But for Luke, there just hasn't been much of an explanation for this. And another example of this is like when Luke's fighting Jabba's uh, goons and like the pirates, whatever you want to call them. Yeah, like dude, he has a pretty tough time compared to like Obi-Wan when he's fighting droids and clone troopers and uh, like anybody, like any blast wielding foes. Obi-Wan fights bounty hunters like Obi-Wan, or maybe besides Cat Bane. That's in the Clone Wars and the Clone Wars, whatever. But yeah, so like there's just like really giving him a lot much of a tougher time than I could imagine it having to Obi-Wan. And like hell, he even like gets his hand shot. Like it's like he genuinely is having a tough time. I don't even think I'm exaggerating too much. Like it's not like he's just like on his last leg or anything, but it's like yeah, he is having a bit of a tough time. Um. So yeah, I think overall, Luke in the originals is not super powerful. Vader was holding back against him, obviously, because he's his son. And if he killed Luke, the Emperor would beat the shit out of Vader, and yeah, that would just go really bad for everybody involved. And Vader would not do that because he's not an idiot. So, yeah, I think now in the Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett, we see him in one fight. I mean, we see him briefly use some Force abilities and practice his skills in Boba. But like, okay, in a Mando, in Mandalorian, he fights like what, like 20 Dark Troopers, I think. or no, it's got to be more than that. I don't know. No, yeah, it's got to be like 100 or something. No, not 100, like 50. I think 50, something like that. Yeah, 50 probably. Dark Troopers. Sorry, for my estimations, I'm whack today. Okay, but yeah, yeah. So I think this is a pretty impressive uh, display of skill and power and his development in his fighting skills. But there's no buts. Like he's quick, he's fast, he's strong. He's his form 5, by the way. I probably should have said that, which is one of the best overall forms, as it's offensively. That's what it's oriented mostly. It's mostly offense, but it also has a strong defense as well. So it's one of the best well-rounded lightsaber forms. But overall, there's not anything that I've seen him do that I would look at and say, I don't think Obi-Wan will be able to do that. Besides him using Force Crush against the Dark Trooper, because Obi-Wan just doesn't use Force Crush as a darker power, and he doesn't do things like that. I think he could, and he would have the self control to do that, but he just doesn't. But because it's just a choice. But yeah, so his Force powers, Luke's Force powers, might be better than Obi-Wan's. It's once again, it's tough to gouge. Like he pushes the Dark Troopers. He's there's nothing Obi-Wan would have a tough time doing, but Anakin, after, or Vader, I guess, after losing to Obi-Wan, and he gets a lot weaker immediately after, because he loses all of his limbs and he just got burned up to a crisp, then he's still able to easily destroy all the droids in the room. So, if Obi-Wan used Force Crush, and, just remember, Vader got weaker after that, I don't think it's too far-fetched to say Obi-Wan, if he used Force Crush, he would be able to do the same thing. But I don't know. Luke did it pretty easily, so I think it's not much of a stretch to say that Luke's more powerful than Obi-Wan in the Force. But once again, I feel like this is tough to decide. Now, on to the one and only Obi-Wan Kenobi. So, Obi-Wan Kenobi, he uses Form 3, the defensive form, known as Sorsu. He was a very defensive fighter, as, was the style. That's what the style was, pretty much. And he used pretty simple force powers, but he could use them in very smart ways. Like he used the force as force push, force pull, to increase his abilities, like athletically and things like that. Nothing crazy. Uh, but yeah, he was naturally didn't have the strongest connection to the force. It was more so his willpower and his work ethic that got him to where he was. So, Obi-Wan, now let's check out what he was able to do as a fighter. In Revenge of the Sith, the main thing people use against him is how he fights against Dooku. And to that I say, well, Anakin and Dooku, his fight was different because Dooku was not trying to hurt Anakin, while Sidious specifically told Dooku to kill Obi-Wan, but to tempt Anakin to turn to the dark side. Once again, pretty much the same, more or less the exact same situation as Luke and Vader. Dooku is fighting Anakin, taunting him, then boom, gets off guarded and beaten, and he can't really kill Anakin, or Sidious kills him. It's just a lose. And he probably has a better chance of surviving against Anakin than Sidious. So, yeah, pretty much, yeah. Dooku is extremely powerful, by the way. He's able to contend with Yoda in a force battle, but I think it is worth noting that neither one of them is going all out. I think it's safe to say that, and unlike their duel, but Yoda is definitely the more powerful user in the Force of the two. But yeah, he's pretty powerful with the Force. There is probably only Jedi who's more powerful than Dooku in the Force is Yoda, and I think the only reason Dooku didn't use the Force on Anakin was because he wasn't trying to hurt Anakin or kill him, obviously, as I've stated before. But yeah, so yeah, he uses the Force on Obi-Wan to get him out of the fight, yada yada. So yeah, I think as we see Anakin and Obi-Wan later on in their fight, him and Obi-Wan are equal in their powers in the Force. And then as we see in their duel, they are about equal in their skills with a lightsaber. I think I'm going to make a video about this discussing who is more powerful. But as for right now, I'm just going to say they're more or less about equal. All right, I think that's safe to say. They're giving their all, they're going nuts. There's some people who don't think Obi-Wan, Some people don't think Anakin was trying at all, and I'm just like, I'm not even going to discuss that today. But in a different video, I'll make, that's a new series that I'm going to make eventually. But yeah, Obi-Wan was able to take on Anakin, and they were both similar on par fighters with each other, and Obi-Wan did come out on top against Darth Vader, or Anakin Skywalker, at the peak of his power, because he was using a lot of anger, a lot of rage, which makes dark side users stronger. And he was also easily, well, pretty easily able to defeat General Grievous, who was able to beat many different Jedi throughout the Clone Wars, and was a general of the droid army. So I think Obi-Wan has a pretty good case for being one of the best Jedi fighters to ever live. We're not done yet. So yeah, there's a few more things to talk about Obi-Wan. So he also, it's worth noting, he defeats Vader during Kenobi when he's similar, around the same amount of power that he is in Revenge of the Sith. I say he's a decent bit more powerful than he is in Revenge of the Sith, but regardless, yeah, he is able to take on Vader better than Luke did, I'd say. But and I don't think it was off guard. Really, I mean, like a little bit, but like he just genuinely just kind of kicks Vader's ass. Like, I mean, I don't know. I might seem biased here, but like I was rewatching film. I guess I mean by that I'm just watching Star Wars fights today, and yeah, and Vader definitely had a tougher time against Obi-Wan. He's weaker, but he's also trying a lot more, obviously, against Obi-Wan, because that's the man he blames for everything, versus his son, who he still cares about, regardless of whether he wants to admit it or not. Like, he just, like Luke said, like, Vader just would not bring himself to kill him before, and that he wouldn't do it again. He wouldn't do it, period, actually. But, alright. And then another thing is that Obi-Wan's just a lot more experienced than Luke, and he has, like, he was fighting Sith Lords in their prime. He was in the Clone Wars, the biggest war ever. Like, as a Padawan, he, like, beat the first Sith Lord in a billion years. Like, this man, he's the man. Obi-Wan is the man. Luke saved the rebellion, and he is also an amazing hero. But, like, Obi-Wan is, like, that guy. Like, he is the one who, like, without him, the Republic would have been shit. The Jedi would have been shit. Like, he is the center man. He's the centerpiece, bro. Like, I'm sorry to say it, but he was one of the best fighters, and he is just awesome. Now, let's discuss who would actually win this fight. So, Obi-Wan, I think, is a smarter fighter, but Luke is younger, so he'd have a lot more energy in a fight. Luke is a lot more naturally gifted than Obi-Wan, and, like, by far, but Obi-Wan is a lot more experienced, also, by far, with the amount of fights he's had and he's won and all that. Obi-Wan is probably the better lightsaber duelist, I would say, and just better with the lightsaber in general. Luke, on the other hand, he is able to use more force powers, which I'm not sure who exactly is the better force user, force power wise. If like they just came into a force push battle, I'm not sure exactly who would win. But force abilities, Luke has more force abilities, so I mean you could argue that he has the edge there. Uh, and yeah, I mean it's a pretty close fight with all the different things. And Luke also, I mean he knows how to use some other weapons, but yeah, he's mainly gonna use a lightsaber. Same with Obi-Wan, obviously. Also, yeah, Luke. I don't know if Force Choke or Crush will come into play. I don't know if he's using that in Obi-Wan because his Force barrier is probably a bit too strong for Luke to penetrate in that much of a capacity. But yeah, overall, I think Obi-Wan is probably a quicker fighter. Luke might be a bit stronger because he's a bit younger, and especially when he's his anchor. But overall, I think the winner would be Obi-Wan Kenobi. I think this really comes down to Obi-Wan just being a better fighter, fighting better opponents, having more experience, and I just do not think Luke is as good as him. And especially when you consider that Obi-Wan defeated Anakin, who Luke fought very similar to, but Luke was a bit smarter, but Obi-Wan's just smarter than either of them by pretty good margin, I would say. I mean, Luke eventually, like, during his peak, like, before Kylo burnt down their temple, yeah, he'd probably kick Obi-Wan's ass, but during this point in time, Obi-Wan is the better fighter. I think he would find a way to win. I don't think it'd be easy. It'd be a very difficult fight, but I think Obi-Wan would win. That's just what I think, but please tell me what you guys think in the comments down below. Be nice to each other. And have a good day, and I hope you guys enjoyed, and may the force be with you always.